Awesome. All righty. I'm Paige. I'm an alcoholic. Oh, you know what? I was absolutely going to do? I was going to tell you what page we're on before we did the announcements so that everyone would have time to find the page. And I even told Rob that that is what I was going to do. And I had that plan so that we'd be all like efficient and I forgot. So where we're going to kick it off is on page XXVIII. So we're right in the middle of the doctor's opinion. It's Roman numeral 28, but that's not going to help you find it. So if you're trying to find it, if you go to page one and you flip back one page and flip back another page, it'll be on the left-hand side. Page XXVIII. Man, I had my little plans and designs. See how they turned out? Not well. So XXVIII, right in the middle of the doctor's opinion. And where we left off is the second to last paragraph near the bottom. And it says, if any feel that as psychiatrists. So it's right after that paragraph, frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. So this is a statement attributed to Dr. Silkworth, who is explaining, like, the message which can hold these alcoholic people. It can't be froth. It's got to have weight. It's got to have depth. And he talks about that depth and weight, but in all cases, for a recovered alcoholic to help another, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. And that's what I needed. I need some life recreation. The life that I was living was not working. And so as we rock and roll into this paragraph, XXVIII, second to last paragraph, I'm just hoping everyone gets there. It says, if any feel that as psychiatrists directing a hospital for alcoholics, we appear somewhat sentimental, let them stand with us a while on the firing line. See the tragedies, the despairing wives of little children. Let the solving of these problems become a part of their daily work and even of their sleeping moments. And the most cynical will not wonder that we have accepted and encouraged this movement. And this is like the point of the book where I'm like, oh, Silky, because I think we're friends. He's been dead before I was ever alive, but I think we're friends. Silky, he knows what's up. He's my homie. And I'm like, hey, Silky, you're getting a little defensive. You know what I mean? Because we're talking a lot about the medical journal Lancet last week, and we're talking about Lancet and how to spell it and what is it. And we were talking about how describing alcoholism as an illness was going out on a limb. There were some articles out and about that were saying that this thing is an illness, but it was not a widely accepted medical truth. And so Dr. Silkworth is going out on a limb saying alcoholism is an illness. Now, it's gone a lot further on that branch, that limb that he is upon, where it's a little less sturdy, where he's saying the solution to that is spirituality. The solution is a spiritual awakening. Their ideals must be crowded at a power greater than himself. So you can imagine that at this moment, Silkworth, he's getting a little defensive. So he's like, if you think what I'm doing is airy-fairy, floofy, which is the scientific term for it, if you're there and you're thinking like, man, what are you, some sort of like crazy doctor? He's saying, you do my job. You do my job. Stand on the firing line of life, the firing line of this illness, and you see the horrors of alcoholism. You see the horrors of addiction. You see the horrors of the untreated illness that brings us to this study here today. See the destruction in the lives of innocent people. You do my job. And so that's how I would read that for a long time. I'm like, oh, Silkworth's getting a little defensive, fair enough. But there was something that struck me. And it was this idea that never in my life would I thought that my drinking, that my alcoholism, that my drug addiction would keep a doctor up at night. Do you know what I'm saying? I not once in my life thought that my alcoholism would have that sort of effect on a doctor, a psychologist. It's like, I never would have thought that. And it was the last time I went through this study, I had this experience, and it's just kind of loud in my brain. So I'm going to share it with you because that's how this works. When things get loud in here, they come out here. That's the study. Whee! You're like, oh, that's why she goes on tangents. And so I remember, and I don't talk about this part of it too much, but part of where my alcoholism took me is homelessness. And there was a period of time where I was living on the streets of Calgary. And I don't share about that a lot because if you're like me, you're looking for all the ways I'm not like Paige. All and you're like many. I'm very different than her. She's a little much, but I'm looking for all the ways I don't fit. I'm looking for all the ways I don't belong. And I'm like, oh, I wasn't homeless or I wasn't that. So I often don't share about being homeless unless I think it can be helpful. But I was and by the way, homeless does not make me alcoholic, and it does not make me more alcoholic or less alcoholic than anyone else. I do joke that it might mean I'm not a great roommate. Uh, but that's just my interpretation of it. But I remember because there was a period in my life where I was living under this bridge. It was the so this is only for the Calgarians. It was the underpass that's right by where Cowboys used to be. You got downtown Cowboys, that underpass. That's where I lived. And then sometimes I would sleep on the train tracks up top because I gotta what do they call it at the top of the apartment? It's like, ooh, that's the fancy suite, sleeping by the train tracks on top. Classy. But I was living under that underpass. And that's where I was. And I remember oftentimes I would go and I would sit out in the sun because I am perpetually cold. I'm not somebody that does well outside. I'm perpetually cold, and we get my complexion. I am also easily sunburned. So I would often sit outside and try to get the sun, and then get too much. But I would often like panhandle. And I remember there was a gal, and it was along her way to work. And she would often see me, and I didn't really register her. But I remember this one day she was like, hey, she didn't know my name, but she was like, I hadn't seen you in a while, and I was worried about you. Do you know what I mean? And like, she's like, there is not some nice things that are happening down here. And like, I was at the time, I was this 18-year-old little girl. And she's like, I was worried about you. And that is the power of this illness, like that I could hurt a stranger who just saw me on her way to work. Never. And I think to myself, like, man, if the world could write my 8-step list, how different it might be. You know what I mean? But by that same token, I don't know the impact that my addiction, my alcoholism, my compulsive, whatever brings you to this study might have on those around me. But by that same token, I do not know the ripple effect that my recovery can have. And a couple blocks down in that area, downtown Calgary, I was going to a speaker meeting, and a sponsee at the time was taking me, and we were going down to the meeting. And this was just like a year or two ago, so this wasn't very long ago. And I see this gentleman, and he had fallen completely back. When you're drinking and you don't have a like soft fall, like you could just tell he did a full on timber, like a tree, like he boom, full on flat on his back. And I'm like, uh-oh, that's not good. So I go over and we try to hey man, you doing okay? And he wasn't very responsive. He wasn't fully unconscious, but I'm like, I should call an ambulance. So we call an ambulance, and some fire trucks show up, and they're like, oh, he's good. We got him. And so I go with my sponsee to the meeting, and we go, and great meeting, and we leave, and I see that the guy's like suitcase, his bag was still there. I'm like, they left his bag. That's not cool. And then I see that he's still there. And I'm like, oh, that's extra not cool. So I go over, and he's more responsive now. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if he told them to F off and he was fine, or they were just like, this is a hassle, I'll leave him. But we start talking to him and trying to figure out like a solution. Can we get you somewhere? What can we do for him? And he says, hi, I'm so and so. And he shakes my hand, and I say, yeah, I'm Paige. It's lovely to meet you. And he's like, oh, I know you. I met you at the AA meetings. And it's what, right? It's one of those, I have no idea the impact that my recovery can have, you know? I don't know the ripple effects of my recovery. And so that's when we talk about, I talk about Dr. Silkworth getting defensive, but I just saw the effect of this illness, and we can see the effect of this recovery. So it says, it says, we feel that after many years of experience, we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men and women than the altruistic movement now growing up among them. So what he's saying is after years of working in this field, working with alcoholics, working with addicts, he has found nothing. And this is what his business is in. This is his career. This is his livelihood. I think he used to be a neurologist and then dove into addictions and alcoholism. And he's saying, I've found nothing that works as well as this. And if in altruism is helping other people for fun and for free. That's not the literal definition. Altruism is helping other people for the right motives, helping other people and letting go of the results. And he's saying this movement, one alcoholic helping another, this is something that works better than any other treatment with which I have employed. But also, when we talk about the altruistic movement, what are we pointing to? 12-step work. Man, we're talking about 12-step work. Got to work with others. I've got to carry this message to others. That's what we're talking about. And now what we're going to get into is such a vital, important paragraph in this book. We're going to break down what is often referred to. I was going to say I call. I'm not the only one that calls it that. There are some things that I'm the only one that calls certain things. Like stick around and you'll get to the Missy Elliott promises. Woo, those are fun. I'm the only one that calls them that. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of people call this the cycle. And so what we're going to do is we're going to break down the cycle. We're going to break down the symptoms, the stages, and then I'm going to do a little. Actually, you know what? I'm a screen share right now. I'm gonna get a little screen share happy. So this is what we're talking about, and it'll be behind me, but I'll explain it as we go, and then I'll break down the cycle as it's shared on the Zoom screen. So it says men and women drink, and feel free to cross out men and women, because we're not talking about average people. We're not talking about regular folks. We are talking about alcoholics drink, addicts use, compulsive gamblers gamble, compulsive sex addicts act out. That is what we're talking about. We are not talking about regular people. Alcoholics drink. And it goes on to say, essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. So I am drinking for the effect. Now, this might not be hopefully this is not new information for you, but if it is, it was a revelation to me. Did you know that non-alcoholics are not drinking to find a solution to life? Did you know that they're just having a drink and going to watch the sports? Or just have a drink and get a little bit social? You know what I mean? I'm like, it was social drug use. We're all hiding in the same bathroom. It's social. And what am I? That's not what I'm after. I'm not necessarily after the social. I'm not necessarily after the, companionship and conviviality. I am after relief. If you were to define who I am a relief seeking missile. I am after release. I am after relief. I am after the solution. Man, what I'm after is this thing. It is, that's what I'm after. Sponsee of mine, he was talking about how in cars they have these springs. And I really am not a car person, so I don't quite have the full thing, but they have these compressions or these springs. And if a spring gets wound really tight, it's incredibly dangerous because it can just almost explode. And that's what I am, is I am a spring, a coil that is wound too tight. And what I am after is relief. That's what I'm after. Now, just being after relief doesn't make me an alcoholic or doesn't make me an addict, but it is helpful to understand that my relationship with substances is not like other people's. It says the sensation, and that is the sensation that, in my shoulders, I was wearing them as earrings, they begin to fall. Oh, like that sensation, that numb, that, I am okay, that sensation is so elusive. To be elusive is to be just out of grasp. I can't quite hold on to it. That's what that means. That while they admit it is injurious, so that feeling, that ease and comfort, it's just out of grasp. I need more. I want more. But I can admit to you, I can admit to you that alcohol is hurting me. I can admit to you that drugs are ruining my life. I can admit to you that these compulsive behaviors are causing pain and suffering. I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, I do not want to do it anymore. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to hurt those that I love. I don't want to, I can tell you it is ruining my life. They cannot, after time, differentiate the true from the false. And that, if you're writing in your book, and I hear that's what all the cool kids are doing, that never got us in trouble. You can make a little note, the mental obsession. You can write that that is our mental obsession, unable to differentiate the true from the false. And this is really like what is like makes me an alcoholic, that I am unable to differentiate what is true from what is false. And what we're talking about with respect to the first drink. So what that looks like, what is true for me as an alcoholic is that when I take a drink, more often than not, I need another. And then I need another, and I need another, and I need another. You see, I take a drink and I get thirstier. You see, I take a drink or I take a drug or I act out on a compulsive behavior and I cannot control the amount that I take. That is what is true. What is true is that my lack of control is ruining my life. The inability to control the amount that I drink or use is destroying my relationships, destroying my family, destroying my hopes and goals and dreams and dignity and self-respect. That is what is true. I cannot control it. I need to stay sober. I have to stay sober. And what is false is the little thought that happens in my mind when I am as sober as I am today, but my illness is untreated. And it's a little thought that looks a little something like, this time will be different. Nobody will ever know. I'll just go out for 3 drinks. My problem is alcohol, but I can smoke crack like a lady. Or my problem is crack, but I can drink like a lady. And I always preface this with, I have never done anything ladylike in my life. That is not like I don't even know it's an adjective, but we cannot apply it to me. It does not apply to me. I'm not ladylike. But it looks like effort. It looks like I'm going to kill myself anyway, so why don't I get loaded? It looks like I'm filled with pain and guilt and shame, and I can't stand the way that I'm feeling. It looks like a thought that is on me that says, take a drink, take a drink, take a drink, take a drink, until I finally give in. But it also looks like I'm living my life and I got a case of the suddenlies. I got a drink in front of me and I almost don't know how it happened. And so that is the obsession of the mind. When I am sober, like I am today, I get a thought that tells me a lie. And that lie is whatever my brain's going to believe, Paige, you can drink again. That is the mental obsession. And that is what is kicking my butt. That is what makes this a hopeless condition. So it says to them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. I did not know what was wrong with me. And I didn't have like a helpful benchmark. I couldn't really compare myself to others. I did constantly, chronically comparing myself to others, but I could not figure out what was different. And it was all that I knew. And I remember this time I was in a taxi with my ex. And my ex also, spoilers, shocker, also an alcoholic and a drug addict of the hopeless variety. Like it was a disaster of a relationship. The dumpster was on fire. But we were in a taxi, and my ex was like, "Hey man, what's your poison?" And the taxi driver like did not know what he was talking about, and it like clicked to me. I'm like, Raymond, I think what he's saying is that not everyone needs substances to function. You know what I mean? That was a revelation for us in the backseat, you know? So it says, to them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They're restless, irritable, and discontented. And I want to point something out, that restless, irritable, discontent, that is how I feel sober. That is how I feel abstinent. And if I come to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous or Cocaine Anonymous or whatever fellowship, if you're asking me, Paige, what's your problem? Well, to be honest with you, I'll do everything in my power to avoid having a conversation. You know what I mean? Like, what's your problem? That's a pretty direct one. Or what do you think your problem is? You know, like, what's wrong with you? And at first I'll tell you it's him. It's the ex. He's got to get his stuff together and then I'll be okay. But eventually I get a little bit more honest and I tell you it was alcohol or I tell you it was drugs. But if you were to ask me, Paige, when do you feel restless, irritable, discontent? And I would have to tell you when I'm sober. You see, here's my experience. It's when I'm sober that I have that depression so bad I can't get out of bed. You see, for me, it's when I'm sober, I have that anxiety that like it feels like somebody is stabbing my shoulder blade. It's when I'm sober, I have that screaming that is coming from the depth of my soul. It's when I'm sober, I feel like I'm that raw, exposed nerve ending. And for some ungodly reason, the wind is blowing. It is when I am sober that I am suicidal. It is when I'm sober that the world feels too much. It is when I'm sober that, man, I can't do it anymore. It is when I'm sober. Now we talk about the spiritual malady, and this is we don't talk about it too much in step one. And the reason we don't talk about it too much in step one is the spiritual malady is not limited to alcoholics, to drug addicts, to compulsive, whatever brings you to this study. There are people who do not have our illness who have the spiritual malady. And if you don't believe me, spend some time at your HOA or your PTA. You know what I mean? Just spend some time. Heck, spend some time at Walmart. You know what I mean? Drive, just drive. You know, whether it's on the 401 or the QE2, just drive. You know, the I-95, drive, and you will find some spiritually sick individuals. The spiritual malady is not limited to us, but it is helpful to understand that that is ultimately what we are going to be treating. We are going to be treating that hole in the depth of my soul, the emptiness and loneliness that nothing could fill, that I couldn't even put words to, and I don't know what it is when I got here. And we're going to fill that with the spiritual awakening. That is, spoilers, that's going to be our solution. And one of the things that's helpful to understand, maybe it's not helpful, because if you're new, this might be a little bit much. But for me, when I got here, I did not know what the spiritual malady was. And I didn't understand it, but it was helpful for me to understand that when I got sober and I did not treat my illness, it got worse. That I started to feel worse, that I started to feel disconnected, that I started to feel restless, irritable, discontent. Now, I also want to point out, this is a doctor. Dr. Silkworth, he's got his little clipboard and he's like, yes, the patient appears to be a little bit restless, irritable, and discontent. And I'm screaming, like, I want to pull my skin off, like, you know. So it's a little bit of a mild form of describing it. But it was helpful for me to understand that sobriety was not a solution for my illness. Because I would come here and I saw you guys that were happy to be here, happy to be sober, and I was happy to be here, happy to be sober. I'll take 24 and pass it on. You know, I wasn't experiencing what you were experiencing. So I thought that was some of my andas. You know, I'm an alcoholic anda, or I'm an addict anda, and I thought that separated me from you. It also might be helpful for people to understand, at least in my experience, the spiritual malady is, for me, in my experience, a conscious sense of separateness from God. I did not know that's what it was. I did not know that that's what I was experiencing, but that is what I've come to believe it and experience it to be, a conscious sense of separateness from God. And so I'm going to treat that with a conscious contact. I'm going to treat that with a spiritual awakening. And I heard this description. Again, there are human beings on earth who have the spiritual malady that are not alcoholic, not addict. The spiritual malady is not diagnostic of this illness. But I heard it described that an alcoholic or an addict is like a little bit like a canary in the mine. And back in the like 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, they would have these mine shafts. And what they would do is they would bring birds like canaries down into the mine with them. And these birds would chirp and chirp. And if you know, hopefully if you have birds, you know this about birds. Birds are very, very sensitive to gas. And so what would happen is if poisonous gas was released into the mine, they would kill the canaries and they would stop chirping. And that would be a warning, an alarm for the men in the mines to get their butt out of the mine. And I heard it described that alcoholics are a little like spiritual canaries. We're a little bit more sensitive to the sense of separateness from God. And I come to believe that I have an illness that demands treatment. So this spiritual malady demands treatment. It needs to be treated. And as an alcoholic, I am going to, now that doesn't make me an alcoholic, but I am going to treat it with alcohol. I am going to treat it with the inevitable first drink, first drug, first whatever, or I'm going to treat it with God, a spiritual awakening. And that's, I didn't know that's what I was here to do. That's what I'm doing. But again, spiritual malady, not diagnostic of alcoholism. So they're restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can experience the sense of ease and comfort, because that's what I'm after. Oh, I'm after that ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks. See, that's what I'm after. I'm after that quick relief. I'm after that quick release. I'm after a way to feel ease and comfortable. And it goes on to say, drinks, which they see others taking with impunity. Impunity means it doesn't hurt them. It does nothing to them. It does nothing for them. That's those normal jerks that'll go and have a drink or two and go home. Actually, I talk about this. This is what it looks like to drink with impunity. Some of you guys have heard this a lot, but it looks like, honey, sweetie, I'm going to go to the bar and I'm going to have 3 drinks. I'll be home by 9. And you know what they do? This is drinking with impunity. They go to the bar and they have 3 drinks and they're home by 9. And their pants are dry. And they got both their shoes. And they're at the house with the person they're supposed to be with. You know what I mean? They didn't blow their bank account on drugs. You know, like what? Can't relate. So that's what it means to drink with impunity. It does nothing to other people, but it does something to us. And so it says after they have succumbed to the desire again. So we take that first drink. As so many do, the phenomenon of craving develops. And that phenomenon of craving is that physical allergy, that thing that happens inside of me. I take a drink and I need more. And the more that I drink, the more that I need to drink. And that happens once I start to drink. I take a drink and it sets off this allergy where I need more. And the more that I drink, the stronger that allergic reaction gets, which is why I crave more. And it's why at the end of the night, end of the run, end of a spree, I need that next drink far more than I needed that first. You know what I'm saying? I don't think the hours at the liquor store changed. But in Calgary, unless something's changed, I'm not up to date, the liquor store would close at 2 in the morning. I would need to be there at 10 minutes to 2 in the morning. You know what I mean? Nobody who does not have the physical allergy needs to be at the liquor store at that hour. You know what I mean? Last call comes around and it's a frantic attempt to get as much as I can because I know that thing's in me and I need more. So that phenomenon of craving develops. They pass through the well-known stages of a spree. And a spree sounds way more fun to be on than it actually is. A spree is any length of time that I'm drinking or using or engaged in that addictive behavior. So a spree can be months, it can be weeks, it can be days, or it can be a single afternoon. But that spree is that length of time that I'm drinking or using. So we pass through the well-known stages of a spree because once that allergy has me, off I go and I don't know when I'm going to stop or how I'm going to stop. But at some point, the spree comes to an end. It says emerging remorseful. And this is that remorse regret, that guilt and shame and self-hatred of the morning after. You know, I hate myself. I hate who I've become. I hate the things I've done. I'm filled with guilt. I'm filled with shame. I hate, I'm some words that I will not repeat, but directed directly at me. I emerge remorseful. And that pain and that suffering fuels me to have this firm resolution not to drink again. Now, early in our drinking careers, and I'll point out, only an alcoholic's going to make a career out of it. I was really climbing that alcoholic corporate ladder. It wasn't just the 9 to 5. I was doing overtime. But early in my drinking career, that was a softer swearing off. It was a swearing off like, oh, I'm going to swear off some of those consequences. So I'm not going to drink and drive, or I'm not going to drink while I'm pregnant, or I'm not going to drink while I'm visiting family, or I'm not going to drink on this trip, or I'm not going to drink while I'm at work. It's these softer swearings off. But we've all reached a point where we have said, that's it, I'm not going to do it again. I promise you, we've said that. And it's not worked, because otherwise we would not come here. You know what I mean? Like, I I think if you have the ability to stay sober on your own, you probably got better things to do than hang out with me on a Monday. I'm so glad you're here though. But like I joke often that I'm the like last resort of the truly desperate. You'll hang out with David and Steve because they're a lot of fun. But like for me, last resort, it's gonna be bad to hang out with Paige on a Monday. Or we've said, I'm never going to drink again, and that not have any effect. And that's when we look at what is wrong with me. It's this. I say that I'm never going to drink again, and I mean it. But a day, a week, a month later, I have an obsession of the mind that takes me back to drink. And so it says this is repeated over and over, and really over and over and over and over and over and over. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. Very little hope of his recovery. I am hopeless. So what do I need? I need a psychic change, an entire psychic change. What is that? That is a spiritual awakening. And the word psychic in its original Greek means of mind and of soul. So what I need is I need an entire change of my mind and of my soul. Now, I think I can change my mind with my thinking. I can't. I think I can change my mind on my own. I can't. But it becomes a little bit intuitive that I'm not changing my soul on my own. You know what I mean? And so that is our solution. Our solution, you can write spiritual awakening, spiritual experience, entire psychic change. That's what our solution is in 12 steps. And unless I have that, I am hopeless. And one of the really helpful things that I can do to help me have a step one experience is to come up with examples from my own life of this cycle. To come up with a time, and one of the best places to start is with the firm resolution, because that's usually a definite time in history. You know, we come out of the hospital, come out of jail, get into detox, go to AA or CA or DAA or whatever 12-step fellowship. You know, we go to rehab. You know, that we can usually remember a time where we said, okay, I'm not going to do it again. And then we get thrust into the spiritual malady. And when we look at the spiritual malady, what can be really helpful is to look at the things that we were not doing. So if I was in the rooms of 12 step, what were the actions I was not taking? And spoilers, it would be the steps as a way of life. Like if some of my examples include me coming to 12 step again and again and again, I can have a look at what was I not doing. But what I want to pinpoint is the mental obsession. What was the thought that I had before I took that drink? Because I cannot do anything if there's not a thought before it. So what was that thought? This time will be different. Nobody will ever know. A case of the efforts, a case of the Sundays, a case of the, I got to get it out of my system, a case of I got to go on a big bender, I'll have a real good surrender. It rhymes, you know. What was the thought? And I take that story through and I can see, when I can see my life in the cycle and I can see the cycle in my life, what I see is the hopeless condition of my illness. And I begin to see that I have I begin to develop a step one experience. And I talk about the step one experiences. What do I need to see? I need to see that I'm going to drink again. That is a step one experience. I have to stay sober. I need to stay sober. I want to stay sober, but I will relapse if I have this illness. If I don't have this illness, I've got lots of options, lots of choices, lots of things that I can do. I can play Scrabble. That's a new one. I'm like, I don't know if I'd be good at Scrabble. Let's give it a try. Definitely not a solution for me though. I'm hopeless. So I swear off and I say, I'm never going to do it again. And honestly, that thrusts me into me. And there's nothing that I can put between me, and I don't know what's wrong with me. And a day and a week and a month later, I get a thought, and that thought happens in my mind, and that thought is a lie. And that thought tells me this time will be different. It tells me nobody will ever know. It tells me I got to get it out of my system. I believe the lie. I take that drink and that allergy sets off and I need more. And the more that I drink or use, the more that I need to drink or use. And I go on that spree and I burn my life to the ground. And I come to filled with guilt and shame and remorse and self-hatred and self-pity. And I can't look myself in the mirror. I hate myself. I've done things I never wanted to do. I've crossed lines I've never wanted to cross, and that fuels me to say never again. I am never going to do this again. And I'm thrust into me. And there's nothing I can put between me, and inevitably I get a thought, and that thought tells me this time will be different. Nobody will ever know. And I take that drink, I take that drug, and off I go. And we look at examples from our own life of the cycle. Heck, in the spiritual malady, we can look at all the things that we tried, all the things that we tried to put between us and the mental obsession. Did I try rehab? Did I try detox? Did I try going to the gym? Did I try relationships? Did I try geographics? What are the things that I tried? And the mental obsession came anyways. And when I can see that I am in this cycle, I see the inevitability of the first drink. I see the hopelessness of my condition. And that when I see the hopelessness of my condition, that awakens to the hope that is on offer. Okay, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to have that psychic change, that spiritual awakening. So it says, on the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, what's a psychic change? Again, spiritual awakening. Psychic is of the mind and of the soul. Once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed is just a fancy word for hopeless. Dr. Doom, Dr. Hopeless, he's hopeless, your super villains, hopeless, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. When we talk about he is easily able to control his desire for alcohol, what that means is the mental obsession is gone. The mental obsession has been removed. That is what we're talking about. And says the only effort necessary, rude. It's going to require effort. Oh man, I was hoping this would be an into lounging around sort of deal. Come on, man. But the only effort. So we don't have to do a whole lot in a whole lot of different areas. The only effort, the only thing that is asked of me to get off that cycle, to get to our solution, the spiritual awakening, is that being required to follow a few simple rules. Girl, I don't like rules. Don't tell me what to do. I'm going to do the opposite. You can cross out rules and you can write the 12 steps. Because it is the 12 steps that is the series of actions that get me off this cycle from that place of hopelessness to that place of hope. And that's what I need to do. And we can look at this again through the lens of problem, solution, program of action. So when we look at the cycle, we see our problem. We see that I've got an allergy of the body, which means that I cannot drink successfully. And we've got an obsession of the mind, which means I'm doomed to continue on in this cycle. This is the problem. This is step one. And step two is simply about believing that our solution exists. Our solution is the spiritual awakening, the entire psychic change. That is our solution. I just need to believe that it could be possible. So that's the solution. Another way to look at is the foundation for step two. And what is asked of me in step three is to make the decision to take the actions, to take our program of action, problem, solution, program of action, to decide. Step three is to decide to do these steps as a way of life out of this book, like my life depends on it, because it does. Because it does. Because if I can see my life in this cycle and the cycle in my life, there is a sense of urgency. I will relapse if I don't do this. And if I understand step one, it really helps me with the third step decision. And really, this is a kind of visual of what 12 step is and what we're trying to do. So I will stop the screen share. We can all see each other again. Hi, everybody. I missed you. That might be codependent. I've done some work on that in the steps. Woo! But one of the things I also want to point out about this paragraph on XXIX, when it says, on the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. Now let's go almost across the page. It's across the page and slightly up to the first full paragraph on XXVIII. Because throughout this book, we see hopeless, then hope. And as we're reading through XXVIII, and then the following paragraph, we get the hopeless, and then we've got the hope. Hopeless to hope. But we also see hopeless to hope across the page. And it says, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is the manifestation of an allergy, an abnormal physical reaction. And that the phenomenon of craving, that thing inside of me that tells me I need more, that is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. And see if this sounds familiar. And once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. So the consequences of the physical allergy, they're piling up. Anyone come here with problems that were piling up? Problems piling up. Yeah, you know what's up. Piling up. Now across the page, XXIX. The very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them. Suddenly, and I want to point out suddenly, it does not take long to get well. It does not take long to recover. It does not take long to get out of the cycle. It does not take long to work these steps. It does not take long to have a spiritual awakening. Suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. The only effort necessary is to do the steps as a way of life out of this book. That's all. That's all I got to do. That's where I got to direct my energy. So, continuing on, it says, men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal. So they really mean it. And you can tell that despair, that hopelessness is on their face. And they say, doctor, I cannot go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop, but I cannot. You must help me. That is hopelessness. And that's a good place to be. You know what I mean? In most areas of life, hopelessness, not ideal. You don't want to experience a sense of hopelessness while approaching your Algebra 2 final exam. You don't want to experience like a sense of hopelessness as you're, just trying to book an airline ticket somewhere. Frequent flyer to psych wards, a lot less. Hospitals, a lot less nowadays. We were joking about that before the meeting. But that is hopelessness. And that's what we're looking for in our step one. The ability to see the reality of my predicament, that hopelessness. And it says, faced with this problem, if a doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. To be inadequate is to be not enough. Although he gives all that is in him, it is often not enough. And I'll tell you, as a sponsor, as somebody who works with other alcoholics, who works with other addicts, there are times that I feel my own inadequacy. And I suffer from the illness which I see in the sponsees sitting before me. I feel my own inadequacy. I often talk about this. Sometimes you'll hear speakers, not me, that'll say like, if I could give you the gift of sobriety, I wouldn't, because you'd miss the journey. I would. I'm not offended, but also you're going to die if you don't have it. And nuts to your journey. I want to save your life. I would give it to everyone. I would be handing it around like candy in Halloween. Like I would be giving it out. Absolutely. Heck, I try real hard. But you know what it's like when you can see that window of willingness close in front of you. That sponsee that was willing, that was like, yeah, Paige, I'm going to go to any lengths. I'm willing to do anything. And very quickly it closes. No, Paige, I don't have time to meet. Oh, Paige, you don't understand. I got to work on this. I can't work on my inventory. That window of willingness closes. Man, there are times I feel my own inadequacy. And I have this illness. I have experience with this solution. I have experience with this way of life, and I feel my inadequacy. And listen, I will give all that is in me. I am like, I will go. Like, I will give everything. You give me an inch, I will give you a mile. That's imperial. I don't know if I could convert it to metric. You give me a centimeter, I'll give you a kilometer. How's that? Not a perfect conversion, but it's equivalent. Just wanted to make sure I hit all the international sort of distances. And so it says one, and this is important. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential. It is essential. Without it, I will relapse. Essential psychic change. So human power is not enough, which is rude. I was kind of hoping I could just show up and I could, get it by osmosis. Now we're getting into biology. I was just kind of hoping I could show up and just get it. But the most amazing sponsor, the most amazing treatment center, the most amazing doctor, the most incredible family, children, spouse, the most amazing, most wonderful is not enough. Nothing less than human power is sufficient for an alcoholic of my type. And then we can kind of see, the Dr. Silkworth getting a little defensive again. He's like, though the aggregate of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable, he's kind of saying like, hold on, I am helping people. I just want you to know that I am doing some good work here at Towns Hospital. Like, hey, we are doing some stuff. But then now here's the humility. We physicians must admit we have made little impression upon the problem as a whole. When we look at the totality of alcoholism, the totality of addiction, the totality of compulsive addictive behaviors, there has not been a solution. And this is also a very helpful line if I am trying to diagnose myself, if I am trying to find out whether or not I have this illness. It says many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach. Did I try some ordinary psychological approaches? Did I try doctors? Did I try psychologists? Did I try psychiatrists? Did I try counselors? Did I try therapists? Did I try detoxes? Did I try rehabs? Did I try sober living? Did I try self-help books? Did I try these things? And I'll be honest with you, I did not try everything, but my experience is everything that I tried failed. And if I have tried some of these things and they have not worked, that is an indication that I have the illnesses laid out in this book, that I might be one of the people that is of the hopeless variety. If I am trying human power and human power is not sufficient. So am I of one of those? What's my experience? I get to hold my experience up to this book and hold this book up to my experience and have an experience with this book. Woo! It's experiential. Rock and roll. So he says, I do not hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. So he's talking about he's saying the mental obsession is a part of this. But he's saying, I do not hold the belief that it is only the mental obsession. What he's saying is that there's another component to this. And he says, I have had many men who had, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal, which was to be settled on a certain date favorably to them. So also we can look at examples of our own life of the cycle. Did I ever have a situation where the court case was going to be dismissed? Where, you know what I mean? I was going to get the job. I had one where I was going to get the job. I had one where I was going to write a midterm exam and I was going to crush it. I was going to do great at it. I was learned up. I was studied. I was good to go. And I took a drink or a mind-altering substance a day or so prior to the date. You see, people who do not have the physical allergy can take a drink a day before. In fact, they're sometimes in school, they're like, hey, just take a drink, unwind, like the night before an exam, de-stress yourself. And I'm like, I will de-stress myself behind the dumpster. Woo! Well, I think I'm just going to be responsible. I end up behind the dumpster. So they took a drink a day or so prior to the date, and then the phenomenon of craving. So we're talking about the physical allergy at once. At once, I take that drink takes me, became paramount. Now, if you think paramount, that's the top of the mountain. You can think very literally like the motion picture company, Paramount, because it's got that little mountain at the top of the mountain. So it became paramount to all other interests. What that means is that nothing was as important as getting that next drink. You know what I'm saying? And that's what the allergy looks like. Nothing is as important as getting that next drink. And I often talk about this, that all my alcoholism wants is just one more drink. Just one more drink. That's not too much to pay. That's not too much of a price to pay. And it does not matter whether I'm 3 weeks into a bender, 3 days into a bender, 3 days sober, 3 years sober, 30 years sober. All my illness wants is just one more drink. That is what I'm up against. So they took a drink a day or so prior to the date, then the phenomenon of craving. So I take that drink, it sets off, I need more, at once became paramount to all interests, so that the important appointment was not met. These men were not drinking to escape. So everything's going to work out. Everything's going to be great. They just got to stay sober or not get blackout drunk. So they're not drinking to escape their problems. They're not drinking to avoid their problems. These men were not drinking to escape. They were drinking to overcome a craving. We're talking about the physical allergy, beyond that, their mental control. They take that drink and they cannot stop. That's what we're talking about. And has that been my experience? Have I messed up things that meant everything to me? Have I showed up drunk to appointments, to weddings, to our own wedding, to job interviews, to jobs, to certain things that were so important to us that we had to stay sober for? I couldn't make it. I couldn't do it because I take one and it takes me. You know what I'm saying? And it says there are many situations which arise out of the phenomenon of craving, which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. What we're talking about is the lines that we cross when we're drinking, those lines that we cross in the sand, those things that happen to us that I said I would never have happened to me. You know what I mean? You come to, and it's like my life is absolutely unrecognizable. The hearts we break, the lives we ruin, the hopes we crush, the dreams we destroy. That stuff, because of that, the pain, the suffering, the problems that are piling up on us, that happen because I cannot control the amount that I take once I start to drink. That causes people like us to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. And what we're talking about, and you can write in your book, is suicide. It's important to understand that, I don't know about you, but I came here and I thought an alcoholic death, or I thought a drug addict death, sort of looked one sort of way. And I thought it looked like liver failure, cirrhosis, maybe like drunk driving accident. But it also looks a whole, we're going to talk about what it looks like in a couple chapters here in a bit. But it looks like I end my life. It looks like suicide, and it looks like suicide right after a bender, but it also looks like suicide with a number of years behind me, sober and my illness untreated. You know, that's an alcoholic death. It also looks like staying in a domestic violence situation and losing my life. It also looks like, you know what I mean? I've had people who have had drinking and they fall off things and they've lost their life. You know what I mean? Like, it looks a variety of different ways. And there's something about my little brain that says, that's not going to be me. Later on, we're going to read that, I think I'm going to be up to the gates of insanity or death. But the reality is, if I have this illness, I do not have the power to choose. And if I do not have the power to choose, what that means is I will drink again, I will use again, and it will be into the gates of insanity or death. And we'll wrap it up here, but what I want to end on is just the idea is, if you're here today and suicide feels like an option, if you're here today and you're like, man, I don't know if I need to do this anymore. If you got the voice on your shoulder that's saying, F it, I don't want to do it, I can't do it, it's too much. If you got that voice on your shoulder that's telling you, if it gets so bad, I don't got to do it. What I want you to know is that is not a solution for alcoholism. It is not a solution for addiction. It is not a solution for compulsive behavior. But I understand it. I've been there. But what we have here in 12-step is a solution. There is a solution. There is a way out. There is hope and there is freedom. And it takes some work. I got you. It takes some work. But our lives, as those of us who have recovered, and we got some recovered people here in the meeting today, those of us who have recovered, our life depends on helping you. So if you're hurting, if you're struggling, if you don't think you want to be here anymore, we care. We give a lot of care. I was going to say bad word, not going to say bad words. We care. and we will do anything we can to help you to work these steps and have this experience. So if you've not had it yet, please let us help you. We'll wrap it up there and stop it with a prayer. So thanks for letting me share.